I'm joined by Raj Sabha member and chairman, Indian Council of Cultural Relations, Vinay Sahasrabudhe. So thank you very much for making time for TV9 Digital. And let me begin this interview by asking you, how do you intend to take forward ICCR in your second tenure? And how do you interpret the mandate given by Prime Minister Narendra Modi to you?
Well, I think first of all, I am really encouraged, and I must say I feel very blessed that the Prime Minister has asked me to continue in another term, because I believe the agenda of evolving cultural relationship with every other country is something which is a collective agenda of the entire country. ICCR is an old organization, almost 70-year-old, but a simple institution or an organization like ICCR, I believe, is woefully short to take the agenda forward. And therefore, it's a collective responsibility. Government is also very keen. And what we are trying today, for example, is to have some convergence, have some hand-holding. Our usual habit is that of working in silos. Coming out of that, we are now trying to join hands with every other ministry and taking the agenda of evolving stronger cultural ties with every other country. Because it has been our considered opinion, and I find resonance of it even in the government, in the sense those who are holding various cabinet positions, also concur with my understanding that the cultural relationship and its centrality for the vibrancy of economic, diplomatic, and even strategic relationship needs to be more strongly recognized. And that is what we are trying to pursue. In the first 3-year term, we tried certain new initiatives, we gave shape to certain ideas. Now we have to build upon that, and that is what we are going to do in the next 3 years, which started last January.
Sahasrabudhe, for the Prime Minister Modi, the Act East policy was very, very important. He went to Sri Lanka and many other places in the whole Buddhist circuit. And the sense that the Buddhism was exported out of the Indian subcontinent was a major theme. Do you think that it has really worked in making our diplomatic overture in Southeast Asia stronger?
I would put it in this way, that Buddhism is one of the many channels, rather, or multiple features of our very strong civilization relationship with the entire Southeast Asia and perhaps even Asia for that matter. Recently, I was there in Uzbekistan, and there also I found that Buddhism was once upon a time quite strong over there as well. So the influence of Buddhism is not confined only just to Southeast Asia, but perhaps in most of the Asian countries it was there, and even the Western world is very curious to know and understand about all these things. And therefore the Act East policy, as what the Prime Minister has been emphasizing all along, had several dimensions, and we have to build upon all these dimensions. It is not just about economic relations or cultural relations, but also what I describe as some kind of a development diplomacy requires to be taken ahead with all our Southeastern and Asian friends for that matter. I'll give you an example that although these Buddhist countries have been working in Buddhist studies and things like that, it was India which provided all the support for the conservance of several monuments, even in Vietnam, in Cambodia. I was there in Mongolia, where we have some kind of Hindu-Buddhist dialogue, which the government and the Vivekananda International Foundation have been working for last several years. And we are also very keen that this dialogue should continue for many more years. And with all these efforts, now we are also moving ahead with deciding to organize every year an annual conference on Buddhist studies. There are many universities world over who teach Buddhist studies, and we will be bringing all these academics together in Delhi. And also we have decided to institute an award for an eminent Buddhist studies scholar every year who is kind of internationally acclaimed. And we are instituting this award as well. See, culture is something, as I said, that it is not static. It is always in a flux kind of, and we have to, as what we say in our scriptures, Nitya Nutan Chira Puratan. So it's ever changing, and still it is always very ancient. So we have to kind of find a balancing kind of strategy where we renew ourselves, and yet we have our relationship with the olden era very intact, because we are here because of the fact that we sustained all along, all through these centuries or even millennia for that matter. And therefore, this strength of our civilizational journey requires to be understood. And Mark Tully had very beautifully put it, there are no full stops in India.
This institution was headed by our first education minister. This institution was established to spread Indian culture. So I would like to ask you, how come then this culture has become such a hugely political contested issue in this country?
Well, it was made contested. I don't think per se the issue is a very contestable or debatable kind of a thing. But some people, I don't want to go into any political commentary as such, but people are aware that in the previous era, many of our leaders were shy of proclaiming their identity, which at certain level is essentially Hindu identity. What is wrong in it? Is Gita not a book or a religious volume which is revered by Hindus? It's a fact. But at the same time, Gita teaches us the philosophy of life. And therefore, Prime Minister Modi, without feeling without being shy about it, presented a copy of Bhagavad Gita to the Prime Minister of Japan when he visited there during his first visit to Japan. So why should we be I'll give you one example, how our people ourselves are extremely shy about our own identity. I was there in Tehran some 3 years back. And why did I go there? Because the president of Tehran had come to India. He had discussions with Prime Minister Modi. And during his discussions, he referred to the fact that Maharshi Panini is the same grammarian who created the linguistic structure of both the languages, Sanskrit and Persian. And therefore, Panini is a linkage between Iran and India. And therefore, President of Iran suggested that we should be working more on the legacy of Maharshi Panini. So we organized a seminar there in Tehran. And there is a center of ICCR in Tehran, and we took the lead, organized the seminar. I went there for the inauguration, and I had discussions with various vice chancellors. The Tehran University vice chancellor, when I visited the university, he asked me, and while telling me, sharing with me the fact that here in the University of Tehran in Iran, we are teaching Upanishad. Now tell me, in which Indian university Upanishad is being taught? And frankly speaking, I had no ready answer with me. So if we have decided to push back our treasure which we have, whether epics or Upanishad or Veda or yoga or whatever it is.
You used the word shy of being Hindu. Is it just shy of being Hindu? Or is it just shy of saying that you're a political Hindu?
No. I think the reason behind the shyness might be political, but then it became a part of our day-to-day habits, which is why people are perhaps shy of calling themselves Hindi. Where was the reason for, I am coming to the present era and the present day politics as well. Was it necessary for one politician to say that I am a Janayudhari? Was it necessary to say for a particular politician that I recite Chandipat? This is not required. Why are they now trying to wear their religion on their sleeves? Because they are now having a guilt conscious in their mind. We don't say, none from the BJP is saying that I read Shani Mahatmya or I read some other scriptures. That is completely a personal thing. But these people are now making a political point out of it, because earlier they were shy of even referring to these things, unfortunately.
Correct. So, sir, do you feel that the idea of a culture can be more uniting than dividing? And then how come this discourse on the culture in India is that the definition of culture can divide? So I want your opinion on that. How can culture be encompassing when it comes to Indian identity?
Well, basically, when we deal with issues of culture and identity and things like that in ICCR, basically we have to appreciate the core of Indian civilizational values. And what is that? It starts with our relationship with God, for that matter. India is known, and I use the term specifically, purposely, India is a spiritual democracy. We never tried to monopolize a particular way of worship. We always said, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. That is the credo. That is the foundation of our philosophical thought. So is this not a civilizational value? If this value is there, where is the question of confrontation? There is absolutely not. And therefore, if this is acceptable to all cultures and maybe belief systems and everything, I think there is no need for any confrontation. But it starts with the acceptance of this credo that Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti.
Okay.
Second, the relationship with Mother Nature, as what we do in India. For example, every morning there are people who say, Padas Parasham Kshamaswame. It's seeking apology of Mother Nature, Mother Earth, that I am putting my legs on you, I am walking on you, please forgive me. So there is no confrontation, there is no kind of a craving to conquer over Mother Nature. We always believe in live and let live, even Mother Nature, for that matter. So this is another thing. Thirdly, the way we have our own idea of balancing between individualism and collectivism. Something very unique about Indian civilizational values.
And lastly, I would like you to elucidate on the fact, for many people might know, how does Indian Constitution reflect cultural values? I would like you to speak on that matter. How does a lot of people believe that Indian Constitution does not reflect cultural values? I would like you to briefly answer and tell our viewers how Indian Constitution through pictures and text reflect the subcontinental cultural values.
Well, if one goes to the Parliament Library and sees the original copy of the Constitution, which is very well preserved over there, the kind of pictures that are there in the original copy of the Constitution will also tell you how culture, our Constitution, our polity, our society for that matter, all things are intertwined. We cannot separate one thing from the other. And therefore, our Constitution also provides everything that is required for the sovereignty and integrity of our country. And that is what our culture is. See, after all, if we are one single country, one single entity, of course, there are ideologies who do not believe in that, but that apart. Majority of the people believe that we are one country and not just after 1947, but we were one single country, one single entity for maybe thousands of years. And it's a fact. And now I'll give you an example. Whether in Assamese or in Marathi or in Gujarati or in Kashmiri, there are similar kinds of proverbs and sayings as well. This similarity in our linguistic expression of feelings through proverbs and sayings was not due to any constitutional diktat that there will be similar kinds of sayings in every other language. They were there because our thinking was similar, because there was a commonality of our consciousness, because our ethos was common, which we shared.
So thank you so much for making time for TV9 Digital. Thank you very much, Vinay Sastry.